Guys, I know it's always a wild ride when Trump speaks, but today we're going to take a closer look at his latest claims about Vice President Kamala Harris, California. And get this, mortgage rates. Buckle up, because it's going to be a bumpy ride.
The cost of a typical monthly mortgage has doubled since I left office, and that number was about 3 months old from government, and now it's tripled. We had mortgage rates at around 2%, close to 2%, and they're now at 10%, and you can't get a mortgage. So that means it's a lot higher than 10%. I guess it is whatever they want to give over the money, and that's a lot more than 10%. So when you think about double, they've actually quadrupled or more than that. As the Attorney General, she destroyed California along with Gavin Newsom, and San Francisco, was a great city 15 years ago. Now it's considered almost unlivable. You can't live there. And what they've done to that great state with the beautiful weather like this weather, they have this weather all the time. And they have the ocean, they have the sun, they have everything good. But what they've done to it is a shame. And she's going to do the same thing to our country. It was the policies. They had a recent article, and I didn't know this, but you're allowed to rob a store as long as it's not more than $950. Has everyone ever heard of that? You can rob a store, and you have these thieves going into stores with calculators calculating how much it is. Because if it's less than $950, they can rob it and not get charged. That was her.
Let's start with the first part of Trump's ramble. According to him, the cost of a typical monthly mortgage has doubled since he left office, and that's not all. He says that mortgage rates have skyrocketed from around 2% during his time in office to a whopping 10% now. He even throws in a little whatever, as if it's a minor detail. But wait, there's more. Trump also claimed that Kamala Harris is single-handedly responsible for turning San Francisco into a post-apocalyptic wasteland where you can rob a store as long as you don't steal more than $950 worth of goods. Hold on to your calculators, folks, because we're going to break down just how wrong these statements are. First up, mortgage rates. Trump says that when he was in office, mortgage rates were around 2%. That's not entirely off base. During the pandemic, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates to historic lows, which did push mortgage rates down to around 2%, or a bit higher for a while. But let's be real here. Those were extraordinary circumstances. The whole world was shutting down, and the Fed was doing whatever it took to keep the economy afloat. Now Trump claims that these rates have skyrocketed to 10%. 10%. That's not just a rounding error, folks. That's like comparing a gentle breeze to a hurricane. We're talking about a massive leap into a whole different universe. But let's bring it back to reality for a moment. The actual average for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage as of mid-August? Well, it's sitting at around 6.9%. Sure, it's higher than we'd all like, and nobody's doing a happy dance over it, but it's nowhere near the apocalyptic figure Trump is throwing around with that 10% claim. To put it in perspective, it's like saying you saw a ferocious bear in your backyard, only to have your neighbors come over and find a big, fluffy dog happily wagging its tail. Yes, the dog might be bigger than your average pup, but it's not exactly the terrifying beast Trump is making it out to be. So while the mortgage rates might not be the lowest in history, they're certainly not in the realm of financial doomsday that Trump's dramatic numbers suggest.
Now, Trump also claimed that mortgage rates are now 10%. Well, according to our really good business reporter, Brian Mina, the standard 30-year fixed-rate mortgage averaged 6.9% in the week ending August 15th, not even close to...
And let's talk about that word tripled. By Trump's math, the 6.9% rate we're seeing now would mean mortgages have more than tripled since his presidency. But quick math check. If mortgage rates were at 2% and tripled, that would be around 6%. Which, surprise, surprise, is pretty close to where we are now. So, what's with the 10%? It's almost like he just picked a scary number out of thin air, as if he's playing some kind of financial horror game. Seriously, imagine if all our financial reports worked like that. Today, the Dow Jones dropped 1,000 points, or maybe 10,000. Who's counting? Whatever. Next, let's tackle the claim that Kamala Harris turned San Francisco into some sort of real-life Gotham City, where criminals roam free with calculators in hand, making sure they don't steal more than $950 worth of goods. Sounds like something straight out of a bad action movie, right? Well, here's the truth. Shoplifting in California is still illegal. Yup, you heard that right. Still illegal. Back in 2014, California voters passed a referendum called Proposition 47, which reclassified some thefts as misdemeanors instead of felonies if the stolen goods were worth less than $950. But that doesn't mean you can just walk into a store, grab $949 worth of stuff, and waltz out without consequences. It's still a crime, and you can still be prosecuted and face jail time.
There was a whole bunch of lying wolf, many claims that I've debunked before, but I want to focus on two claims I haven't heard him made before, both of which are egregiously wrong. He claimed that California allows people to rob stores as long as the thieves take under $950, and he said that Vice President Harris is the one who did that. Both parts of that claim are totally false. First of all, shoplifting continues to be illegal in California at any amount. What actually happened was that in 2014, there was a referendum, a proposition on the ballot passed by California voters that made it a misdemeanor rather than a felony to steal under $950 worth of goods. But it's still illegal, it's still punishable by up to 6 months in jail. Now, as for the claim that Vice President Harris was the one who did that, in fact, she did not do it. She was Attorney General, and as Attorney General, she said it would be inappropriate for her to even take a public position on this initiative, so she stayed.
Now, Trump also blames Kamala Harris for this, claiming it was her who did it, as if she personally orchestrated the transformation of California into some sort of criminal's paradise. Let's pump the brakes on that narrative and dive into some actual facts. When this whole issue about shoplifting laws came up, Harris was serving as the Attorney General of California. And guess what? She didn't spearhead the initiative, didn't lobby for it, and didn't even voice an opinion on it. That's right, she stayed completely neutral. She didn't support it, she didn't oppose it, she simply chose not to weigh in on the matter, likely because it wasn't within her jurisdiction to do so. So the idea that she single-handedly turned California into a safe haven for petty criminals? It's about as accurate as saying that eating one carrot will instantly give you perfect 20/20 vision. It's a wild exaggeration at best, and a flat-out distortion of the truth at worst. Harris's neutrality on the issue means she had no direct influence over the law, making Trump's claim not only misleading, but also a clear attempt to pin California's complex challenges on one individual for political gain. Now let's just take a moment to appreciate the sheer creativity of these claims. I mean, Trump's statements are like the political equivalent of those late-night infomercials. But wait, there's more. Act now, and we'll throw in some totally made-up facts for free. It's almost impressive how much he can pack into one rant. Economics, crime, weather. Yes, he even mentioned the weather in California, and of course, a sprinkle of vague, baseless accusations against his political opponents. And can we talk about the mortgage rates for a second? If mortgage rates were really at 10%, I think the housing market would be in full-on panic mode. Realtors would be turning into doomsday preppers, and for sale signs would come with a side of, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." But in reality, it's more like for sale, reasonable rates available, just not as sweet as during the pandemic. So yeah, a bit of a difference there. As for the crime in California, let's be honest, California has its issues, just like any other state. But the idea that people are out there calculating their shoplifting sprees with a careful eye on the $950 limit is just bizarre. It's like Trump is picturing some kind of black market Price is Right game, where the goal is to get as close to the limit as possible without going over. I don't know about you, but I think there are more realistic concerns for Californians, like wildfires, earthquakes, and whether or not In-N-Out will ever open a location outside the West Coast. And speaking of wildfires, Trump's claim that Harris destroyed California along with Gavin Newsom is another tall tale. Last I checked, California is still there, still sunny, still got the ocean, and yes, it's still expensive as heck to live in. But that's been the case for decades. Blaming Harris for every problem California has faced, that's like blaming the weatherman because it rained on your picnic. Sure, it's annoying, but maybe look up at the sky next time. So what can we take away from this? Well, Trump's latest statements are a mix of exaggeration, misinformation, and a dash of good old-fashioned fear-mongering. Whether it's mortgage rates that are nowhere near what he claims, or the idea that Kamala Harris is some kind of criminal mastermind ruining California, it's all just noise. But hey, it's important to stay informed and keep these things in perspective. So, the next time you hear something that sounds a little too wild to be true, whether it's from a politician, a talking head on TV, or even your uncle at Thanksgiving, take a step back, do some fact-checking, and remember, just because someone says it loudly doesn't make it true. Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more debunking fun, and let me know in the comments what crazy claim you'd like me to tackle next. Until then, keep it real, keep it funny, and keep questioning the nonsense.